Hi, welcome to MediatorPodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things mediation, negotiation, and collaboration. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I provide online valuation, divorce, and mediation services in St. Louis, Missouri. In this week's episode, we will discuss family mediation, a unique way to get divorced, with Daryl Weinman. She is a family law attorney and mediator in Austin, Texas. Daryl has been board certified in family law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization since 2000, an honor granted to less than 1% of Texas attorneys. She's also part of the Austin Bar Association in the Alternative Dispute Resolution section and the Texas Family Law Foundation. Another interesting thing is she's a member of American Academy of Certified Financial Litigators. Can you give people an idea of what the mediation, or even like a typical mediation process looks like with your firm?
So, I tell people they can be divorced 6 months to a year, which sounds like a long time, but it's actually pretty fast. And in Austin, we can get that done. There's other counties where if they don't settle, they're not going to get a final trial for sometimes 2 or 3 years. So 6 months to a year is pretty fast, and we can get it done, but it depends on how organized they are, because the attorneys need the information. I mean, I can't advise my client what is a fair settlement till I've seen all the information. And all the information is going to include valuing complex assets like a business, or like unusual compensation packages that they may be receiving. I mean, and there's new stuff that's showing up all the time. Wall Street is very creative. And so, I'm learning that first I had to learn RSUs, the restricted stock units, and then the preferred stock units, and now phantom stock, and, stuff just keeps showing up. And so what is it? How do we value it? And how can we possibly divide it, or can we divide it? So I need all that information. And we kind of keep a spreadsheet in my office of what are all the assets in this marriage, the house, the bank accounts, the cars, the retirement, the businesses, everything they've got. And there's going to be a lot of blanks when we're talking about value, because even with the house, what is the actual value? And somebody's going to want to use the tax appraisal value, which is generally a useless number. And sometimes they can kind of agree. Zillow has actually been very helpful because they generally can kind of agree on a Zillow number. But sometimes, of course, we need the actual appraisal. But putting those numbers in. And so then figuring out, okay, so there's a blank over here on how much the business is worth. We need to fill that in. So let's get a business valuation expert on, set up, get them all the information that they need. And so it kind of depends on how much information they have. Also, it can depend on if they're already separated, like if they've already separated into 2 homes, they're already kind of sharing the kids, they're already kind of on a routine. That's helpful. That's going to get the divorce done a little bit faster. Whereas they just had the screaming fight last night, and now they need to start from the very beginning. And I'm not leaving the house. Well, I'm not leaving the house. Well, I need more time with the kids. Well, you're not getting more time with the kids. And so just getting through that separation portion can take 3 to 6 months sometimes. So if they're already kind of at that, where they've got 2 households set up and a routine, and they're managing their own finances, that's going to move them down the road faster. So there's so many moving parts in a divorce case that it's hard to predict how long it'll take. But the more forthcoming they are with information, and the more cooperative they are with the experts, and it really is mental. I mean, it's psychological. And I tell everybody, I said, there's the stages of divorce, denial, depression, anger, grief, acceptance. And generally somebody is at acceptance because they've come in and they want to file and they're done. Well, guess what? The other person's probably at denial, and you're going to have to let them catch up a little bit, because you're not going to even be able to have a rational conversation with them about settlement until they kind of catch up a little. So give them a little time. And in the meantime, we'll be gathering our information and putting together our spreadsheet and getting ready for making offers.
Yeah. And I think that the anger will sometimes show up in the mediation and it's working through. And that's where, I guess I've always been like, the emotional part of the divorce is sometimes it, just like you said, like cry it out, get it out at the beginning. It's a necessary part of the process. A lot of people want to say, well, we're not therapists, we're not this or that. Understood. But you're creating an environment that people are talking about things that they may not have talked about. Like some of this stuff may never have been said. And now that this is all happening, it just is coming up. It's because, I like to tell people, like, I don't think anybody wants to cry in front of, like new people that they've met.
Right.
But it is just a huge process and you have to be mindful of it and empathetic to it.
Mhm.
These people know that they are paying you money to be there. They know that they have other things to deal with. But I think as a mediator, you have to understand that if you just gloss over everything and just say, you know what, we have a task and we have a list, let's check mark the list. You're going to get to roadblocks or impasse situations where you're not going to be able to fix it.
I have, when I hire my front desk people, I'll tell them, you need to be aware that when people call in, they just picked up the 1,000-pound telephone to make this really difficult call to a divorce attorney. They've probably not, they may not have ever said the word divorce out loud yet. You might be the first person they say it to, and they're going to cry and they may yell and you're going to get full range of emotion. And then, they come into my office and they like pour their heart out and tell me their whole story. And, as we're working through it, they've confided in me things they've never told anyone. They've probably never even admitted some things to themselves. And then I get people who call in and they'll say, I need an appointment to come in. I'm thinking, we don't really have anything we need to work on. No, I need to talk to you. Okay. And they start talking and in their mind, it's a therapy session. And I'll tell them, look, I am happy to sit here and listen and empathize, but I'm not a therapist. And honestly, I'm 3 times the price of a therapist. And so, it'd be much easier if you also had a therapist, a friend, your mother, or somebody to talk to. And sometimes they'll take that to heart, but sometimes they'll say to me, I know that the only truly confidential relationship is an attorney-client relationship. And I know it's not confidential if I start talking to even a therapist, to anybody. And you are also the only person I've ever told these things to, and I'm embarrassed by it, especially I get like really strong, successful women who'll come in and say, I let myself be abused. And they're humiliated by that. And they don't want to tell anybody else. And I may be the only person they've ever told. And so I need to talk that through with you because I don't want to tell anybody else. And so we do as family law attorneys and mediators, and we do a lot of social work and a lot of, obviously I can't do therapy, but I can kind of just be the empathetic ear and let them get it out because they need to get it out, whether it's venting or crying or just talking it through. And so I let them do that to a degree in mediation. When I'm talking about the math person and the feelings person, the math person is done. I walk in there with an offer and they're like, okay, move this, 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 and this. Okay, send this back in there. Okay. And I go into the feelings room and I'm there for 2 hours. They want, what are you doing in there for all this time? Well, some people really need to get the emotion out, talk it through, think it through.
Yeah. Well, and in those situations, sometimes the creative, right, is like, everything's always about money. Everything is always, and it's like, if until you start to validate somebody and hear them and say, okay, I get it. It's not so much an apology always. It's just like validation. It exists. Like you said, sometimes you just need to air it out and get it out, but you don't want to get it out to people that might talk about it.